Hello, welcome back to episode 2 of the Big Douglas Birdcast. In the last week or so, I've seen a lot of views on the YouTube channel, and I greatly appreciate it, and I hope everyone is enjoying the content. I've gotten some really great feedback so far, so for the time being, we're locked down. I'm going to be creating content and hope we can learn a few things together, maybe add a few tricks to the bag for yourselves, and let's just talk about birds since we're locked in our homes or at least our yards or nearby neighborhoods. This week I've got a few different things I want to talk about. I'm not going to delve deeply into rare birds right now, and that's maybe kind of twofold. The first reason is there's not a lot of people finding rare birds right now, and that's probably to be expected. I think there's a lot less chasing going on out there. There's a lot less, running outside the metro, running outside your home area, your county, or whatever. But when some really serious stuff comes up, we'll talk about it, and pick it up in future episodes. But being that as it is, I have a segment planned to talk about historical rarities for a county. I've seen a lot of times on social media where individuals will post a rare bird and then someone else that's well versed in using these online tool sets will say, oh wow, that's the third county record, or oh my gosh, that's the first county record. And it occurred to me that there might be some individuals out there that are like, how on earth do these people know? Are they just like oracles? Do they know everything? Or where are they getting this information from? So we're going to cover a couple of different resources for you to use that for. Spoiler, it's MOU and eBird websites, but we'll go through how to find that information. And if you're curious about, hey, could I ever find a specific bird species in my county? Is that even a thing? Or am I going to have to break new ground? Is it going to be a first county record if I can ever find one? Additionally, then, because we are in our homes a lot, we might have a lot of extra time. Just depends on, what your life is structured like and what you're trying to do. I thought maybe I would cover some birding by ear tool sets that are available to you. And mainly the interest is, how do you get started? How do you go from someone that, yeah, I kind of know a couple of bird calls, but it's not a whole lot, and I just like to look at them, and what am I missing out there? So we're going to talk about a couple of tool sets that are available to you, apps from your device, whether it be your smartphone or tablet device, or website based locations you can jump to as well. There's a lot of resources. I'm not going to cover all of them. I'm going to hit a couple of them. We can review others in the future. If there's interest, I'll continue to just work through these tool sets that are available to individuals over time, and we'll just keep looking at them and learn some things and figure some new stuff out. Additionally, in the very first video I put up on this channel, I kind of gave a beginner's tutorial guide to eBird, how to use the eBird app. And we used the eBird website in the last episode to just delve into finding birds, looking at their arrival dates, their exit windows, things of that sort. But what we didn't cover is how to get media, specifically photographs you might take, or maybe even audio segments and what have you. How do you get those into your eBird records? Because you can't do it from the app itself. You have to do it from the website. So we'll cover that real quick. I've got a list, a legit one that I haven't entered yet. We'll enter it from the website, and that'll also help give you a quick, how do I do an eBird list from the website as opposed to doing it from the smartphone app or whatever, just in case there's interest in that, and then actually appending media to it so you can see that your content goes up there. And we'll talk about the ramifications of putting your media up there as well, because there's a couple of key points I think everybody needs to know and understand and accept if they're going to put that type of content up on their eBird list, because there's certain things implied about it. And then the final thing I want to talk about is yard birding a little bit more. Something I've got going on, and something I would encourage some others to maybe do or to kick things up, just to keep it lively, keep things interesting as we go. So without dragging out too much further, let's jump into the first topic, which will be, how many records does my county have for that species? All right, here we are. We're again staring at my iPad background image. I've updated it with a pair of bufflehead that showed up at Lake Elmo Park this last week. So I did get out. It's about a half mile from my house, so I'm staying relatively close to home, and I'm avoiding most of humanity as much as possible while I'm out on the trail. But I definitely felt like I needed some leg time after working from home all week long and getting out very little on it. But as noted in the intro, I do want to talk about how to find whether or not there are records and how many records, perhaps, of a given species there might be in a prospective county, so an area that you might be interested in. Now, it's not super easy to do inside of eBird, at least not in my experience. Now, if there's somebody that happens to watch this that's like, no, there's a super easy way to do this, then I would really appreciate knowing about it myself. But I have an awareness that you can explore a region. It actually has that section on the right-hand side of this screen at the top, this large image of a gentleman with a scope. It says explore regions, and there's a search bar in there. So if I tap into that, I can put something in there. So I'm in Washington County, and I'm interested in Washington County. I'm interested in a lot of counties, but we're going to talk about Washington County, Minnesota today. All right. So we're exploring Washington County, Minnesota right now, and it's going to default to the overview page and specifically the last seen. So this is a listing of all birds and the last time, the most recent time that they were seen. So this is a reverse sort of it. So whichever list was submitted most recently gets into this list. Now you will see that there are recent visits over on the right-hand side toward the bottom that say April 4th. So the data on the left, the main page of this, is a little stale. It doesn't update immediately. You have to remember eBird is a worldwide platform, which means they have a lot of data sets. So when they present data like this to you, it doesn't always present immediately up to date. So there's been a lot of people birding today, but this is effectively last seen as yesterday's data. But for the purposes of what we're trying to do, this is enough because we have this data. And as I scroll down this list, I'm going to quickly just rip down this list. We start getting into birds that haven't been seen since last year. So actually you can see one in the center of screen. I happened to accidentally stop on a willow flycatcher. I was the last person to identify a willow flycatcher before the end of the season, before they completely migrated out. Was able to get contact call off that bird if I remember it correctly. A little fuzzy, it's been a while. As we go down through this list, we get back into 2018, 2017. So you can see a few more from me in here. Obviously, I bird a lot in Washington County. We can see a Bohemian waxwing. That was a Bohemian waxwing found by my friend Greg Janer. And obviously, he's a really great bird for Washington County. That's a much more northern boreal forest type bird, and they rarely push far enough south to get in. So we see all of these birds in these lists. And if I go back up to here and I say, you know what? I've never seen, let's just say, a gray partridge before. Has a gray partridge ever been found in Washington County, at least as far as eBird is concerned? So on my iPad, I could do gray, but actually I will do partridge. And just the first few, and down here we'll do, oh, I spelled it wrong. So it'd help if you, let's get a few more letters in there. There are no matches for that. So just to validate that my search works, I could do vulture. And let's see, there is a turkey vulture record and black vulture even. So Doug Keyser has a report back in 2007 for black vulture, an extremely good bird. So theoretically speaking, this list, if I just click down here so we can get back to full, this list has 301 species listed on it that have ever been reported at some point by someone in eBird for Washington County. And so obviously the further we get down here, the further into the past we get, the rarer these birds look as a group, because there's some singular records in this data in there. Now what it doesn't tell you is how many records there actually are. And now there are some ways that you can certainly ferret that out. You can do a larger species search, zoom into your county, your area, look for those dots on the map, select them, and you can get some information that way. And there may even be some other ways in there. And as I noted, if somebody knows some better ways through eBird, I know you can download large data sets, but I'm interested in just quickly finding out. I'm going to pop over to the MOU website here, and this is one of the wonderful things about MOU data is this data has been getting collected a lot longer than eBird data has. And if we go over to the left-hand side of this screen, and I do wish I had a cursor so everybody could see exactly where I'm looking and going to stuff, but we're going to go to Review Reported Birds. We were actually in there last week. So it's the fourth item down. I'm going to open up a submenu. And last week we looked at general species information pages. We looked at that to go for early arrival or arrival dates, the main body, and back end stuff. But now we're going to look at query sightings database. So we're going to go into the data itself. Now when you first see it, this form that you fill out for this can look a little daunting. There's a lot going on in here. So let's just do one thing at a time and one thing today. And that one thing is going to be, let's see if there's any gray partridge reports for Washington County. So you can select the county name down here in this form. You can select it right here, and you can select it from that map that was just on the screen. But I'll just go on here since I'm already here. We're going to go all the way down. We're going to hit Washington. All right. So we're interested in ever. We're not interested in whether or not it was between certain dates or whatever it might be. So I'm going to hit the checkbox in the upper right corner of this gray blob here called Ignore Year. And that grayed out the year column in the start and end date just to the left. But right now it's set for April 4th to April 4th, effectively meaning one day, any year, April 4th. But I'm interested in the full year. And so there's a little oval button called year just below that, and when I hit that, it just auto sets that stuff above to January 1st to December 31st. So now we've got the entire year covered for this. Now, two boxes below that, we're not interested in initials in this case, we are interested in species. So this happened to be, I was looking up earlier, warbler, so we're at the bottom of the list. I'm going to go to the top of this list. If you're on a computer, this is a little bit easier to type in. On an iPad like this, you really just have to scroll to it, which can be a little bit annoying, but I do know that the game birds are right after the waterfowl. And here we can hit gray partridge. All right, so now we've set this up. We're going to ignore the year. That means all the data you got, all 100 years, whatever you've got, and the entire year. We're going to look for a gray partridge, and we're looking in Washington County specifically. Beyond that, we do not need to monkey with the rest of these options. We can address those more deeply in the future, but for the time being, set your start date, your end date, set your species, set your county, and click the Go button. So that's down here towards the bottom, this button right here, click, and we get a relatively quick result. Now, if you do something very broad, you could get a lot of results in here. And it might be of less value to you, but there's some really funky things you can do. But in this case, this was our interest. So let me zoom in a little bit here. And let's take it from bottom to top. So it looks like there are maybe, this shows 6 records, but the reality is the Bob Russell record looks like a duplicate. It looks like 5-1, same record. So there might be some duplicate detail, and it has the same location on it. So we're probably talking 5 records. Afton CBC has been running for a very long time. It's one of the longest CBCs, I believe, in the state. So back in 1957, somebody had a covey of 5 gray partridge. The CBC again in 84, but that's a big time swing, 57 to 84. And then again, another big time swing until Bob Russell's records in 2009. So he saw a flyover on 329, and then he was able to get another sighting on 5-1. And then we have Roy Zimmerman with a record in 2014. So gray partridge is extremely uncommon, and I can confirm that. I've been birding in the county since 2012. I have not seen one. They might actually be a mythical bird and not exist, but it is what it is. So if I just back up to this, kind of zoom this back out on stuff, that was just a quick thing that I wanted to do so that when you see somebody online on Facebook, whatever it might be, and they say, hey, you know, I found a first county record such and such, or the second, you know, county record, whatever it is, this is mostly what they're doing. And almost all the time, it's not even the eBird side of stuff, it is the MOU side. A lot of individuals in the birding community do consider the MOU data set to be the definitive factor in has there been a record or not, because the MOU does have a records committee, and that records committee meets on a regular basis to discuss reports of birds and to weigh the evidence around it and then determine, okay, was that, you know, legitimate? Is it, does it meet the litmus test of, you know, actually determining, you know, the correct species? All of that particular data, are there photographs, whatever might be available in it. So that's at least something you can do if you're really interested in finding more challenging birds in your own county. You can kind of get an idea of, you know, using eBird, if they've been eBirded, where they're being found. And MOU, at least you can get an idea of how many records there are in determining, you know, how challenging of an effort is it going to be. So we'll move on to the next subject. All right, we are back, and we have a bald eagle with some serious talons on the screen. I took this at Point Douglas Park in southern Washington County, which is pretty much at the conflux of the St. Croix River and Mississippi River, and there were a lot of eagles on the ice with some open water around, you know, snagging fish whenever they can, and certainly threatening all of the other waterfowl that were in the area. But using my Nikon P1000, I just thought it was an incredible view of these massive talons on these birds. All right, so we want to talk really quickly about uploading media and entering a checklist in eBird from the website itself. I just thought there'd be a little bit of value in doing that. So we're right back at the eBird website, kind of defaulting to this explore page, but we're actually going to go to submit. So up at the top on the left, the word submit is wedged between explore and eBird. So you can actually submit directly from the website, and assuming you're already logged in, which I am, I'm going to click submit in here. So again, this is going to be a little bit odd because normally you could select from this drop-down list and it's your locations, but problem is my locations are a couple thousand strong at this point, so on an iPad scrolling through this list is next to impossible. So I'm going to have to do it via maps. So something I can do is I can again type in Washington, Minnesota, and this will bring up a map option for me. So it gives me a reasonable zoom, and if I hit 94 and start zooming in here, I can see my home location, because that's where this list is from. We're going to do a legitimate list. I recorded these birds while I was eating some breakfast this morning with the blinds open, and I recorded the details on this, so I want to make sure I get everything right. April 4th. So these are just standard drop downs, fill them in. It was April 4th. This is key. We talked about this briefly before, but I'm going to mark this as incidental. And the reason why I'm marking this as incidental is, yes, I technically identified all the birds I could identify, but my patio door was closed and I couldn't even hear the outdoors, and I didn't make that big of an effort. I was eating breakfast. It wasn't my primary purpose, and it says it right there when I select birding was not your primary purpose. I noted them, yeah, and they say, you know, driving, gardening, or whatever. I was eating breakfast, so it was an incidental list. I had this at 8:47 a.m. and party size was 1. I'm not going to do any other checklist comments, and I'm going to go continue. And we are right into it. So you can see in this view, it's kind of similar to the app, but based on this location, eBird has a general idea of what I'm probably going to see in here. And I had 2 house finches. I had a mourning dove, which I thought was on my, oh, it's right above it. So got the mourning dove. I need a blue jay on this list. I need an American goldfinch on this list and a red-tailed hawk. All right. So Something to note here, there's add details buttons right to the right of these, but if you try to use those and then you try and upload media directly to this list, it will not work. It will not let you because it wants you to submit it first. So that is another thing to note. And what is going to happen most of the time, if you have media, if you are a photographer, you've got a camera, whatever it might be, you've got a picture and you want to put it up on your list, you have to go to a completed checklist to do that. So in this case, we've put the list in. We're going to click submit here, and it will give me the option in this next step. So this is a completed checklist. I don't have to do anything else. This is just like we completed it from the app, submitted it, and then came out to the website to look at it. It's here. But we have a green button, so you can see green icons and text, 5 species observed, right in the center of the screen, and then over to the right of that is add media. And here's where you can begin to add media. But something I want to reference, and I will put a link to this in the description of the video itself. eBird and the Cornell Lab of Ornithology have some specific guidelines on what it means when you upload your photographs. I have seen discussions online where individuals get fairly rankled that effectively eBird and Cornell Lab of Ornithology are taking some set of rights with these photographs, with the images that you put up. This is a nonprofit organization, and effectively they're saying if you put your photos up here, then we can use them for promotional purposes, educational, whatever it might be, so that we can help further research, whatever it might be on there. You do retain copyright for your image, but you are giving something up. You are allowing them to use that image in perpetuity. If that is not acceptable to you, then this is not where you want to be with your photographs. Now, the vast majority of people probably completely fine with it. Myself, I have no desire to seek out profit from my photography. So I'm not worried about whether or not it also has a license that I've granted indefinitely in some other space. If you have a picture you think is so good that you could make money off it, uploading it to eBird is probably not a great idea. Beyond that, I think this is a wonderful way to get extra value out of your photographs because you don't lose the ability to use them for your own purposes, and then they gain the ability to educate, advance research, all those sorts of things. So that aside, again, that link to their specific policy will be in the description. Let's click on Add Media. It's a relatively simple process in here. So who did I take a picture of this morning? I took a picture of a mourning dove and 2 house finches. So we're going to go to Add Media next to the mourning dove, and I'm going to look in my photo library, all photos, and there's my mourning dove, and I'm going to click Done. That's all it is. So from my iPad, and this is relatively similar on a PC running like a Microsoft operating system, you can do that, and you can see the green bar underneath this image is loading. So when that's done, then you're done. But you need to wait until that's done. And you can see in the upper right corner as well, it says uploading 1 files. So once this is completed, it'll say saved up there. You can just see it update in the upper right, saved. And this image is in there. Now let's do, and you could do these all at the same time. I'm just doing them one at a time here for demonstration. We're going to go to House Finch. We're going to go to Photo Library, and I've got 2 in there. So we are going to select this one and this one. Both were taken this morning. I'm going to click Done. And now it's uploading 2 files. So you can see it in the upper right corner just saying uploading 2 files. And you can see the green flood indicators in the bottom left where those images are going. And you just wait for your images to finish the upload. Once everything's done, it'll indicate you're done. And then you can click the Done button in the upper right. And that's pretty much all it is. Again, be aware of what you're uploading. Be aware of what rights you are granting to Cornell Lab of Ornithology, which you're reserving for yourself. And if you're comfortable with that, then I say fire away. All right, let me click Done here. And this will go back to the list that I was just on, and you will see the images in there. So if we wanted to, we could pop into this slightly drab male, maybe a first-year male, looks like might even still be molting. He is not a very bright guy yet. And then here's our chonky mourning dove that came to visit this morning was enjoying a little bit of sunlight since we got our little crusting of ice and everything. I think my mother made a comment on social media yesterday about having all 4 seasons yesterday, and that definitely felt like a thing. Close this out. And so that, that's kind of a done thing. Now, the interesting piece is here, if you go into the upper left corner, the eBird logo, not the Cornell logo with the bird, but the one next to it, and click on that. This is kind of like the general intro page, and they actually keep stats for you on how many species you have photos of in here, and your like checklist days streak. It's not a thing that I get too deep into, but I've got friends that are 600 plus days or 700 days in a row of streaks. So a little bit of mini competition stuff, but it's kind of fun to see your number. I've put 224 species with photos up. Kind of cool. I like the idea of attacking that further in the future and really, going gangbusters on it. But just something to look at and interest, and we'll move on to the next topic. All right, we are back at the home screen, basically, of the iPad. We've got a female house finch staring at us from the cold grass this morning with a little bit of snow crusted into it. If any of you have children out there, your kids are trying to finish out their school year by learning from home. So they're doing some distance learning, maybe doing some takeaway activities you're helping them with. So this next segment is sort of in honor of that. It's your opportunity to select something to learn from home, and that's going to be birdsong. I'm going to cover 2 different resources available. I'm not going to dig ultra deep into either of them. One of them is a paid app called Larkwire. You can see it on my screen right now on the top right-hand side row of the icons. And then we'll talk about the eBird website. The eBird website uses a back-end database that is the Macaulay Library. All of that information, those are your photos, those are your sound segments put to use. So we just talked about you uploading stuff, then you can see the end result of that. But let's first jump into Larkwire. Larkwire is a paid app. They actually have 2 versions of it, or 2 editions of it. They have different song packs in them. I have the first one on here. I believe it was $12 or $13. Some might look at that and be like, hey, that's a little expensive, but bird watching is a bit of a luxury sometimes, so I think this one is worth it because of the way that it quizzes you. It's highly repetitive, and believe it or not, that's a really, really, really good way to learn, is if you get the same thing over and over again mixed in with other birds. That's kind of how we experience them anyway. So let's open up this app. Once we get in here, you don't have a ton of options. You can search and browse and kind of mess around and everything, and you can see in this iteration, this is a newer iPad. I've actually gone through this entire app before, but it just has a beginner bar on there saying 31 sounds. But I'm going to do play. So the button, it looks like there's a flycatcher on there. We're going to click play, and we are presented. So there's clear tones, songs on the right, songs in rough tones, complex songs. So you can get various things. So it's on complex songs right now. And we got simple songs. So let's go to simple. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to unclick this. All right, this is interesting. What do we got? On our screen, it's going to tell us what we have. We have horned larks, house sparrows, eastern towhee, eastern phoebe. So there will be times in this where you're like, I don't really consider those 2 to overlap very much, so I don't know why I'd be quizzed on it specifically or whatever. This is the great thing about this app, is it presents a number of birds to you, and it has you jump all over the place, a lot of the ways that you would end up birding in real life, and it does it, as I said, repetitively. So let's do a start on here, and let's get some of these in, and we'll just go through a few of these. Okay, that one there, I'm going to stop it here. That sounds like a horned lark to me. Let's tap on this. All right. This guy's almost saying his name. This is an eastern phoebe. All right, any fast food joint with dumpsters or bushes nearby, this is house sparrow. we're back to the guy saying his name, Eastern Phoebe. Ooh, yeah, we've got that descending kind of tinkle sound. So this is our horned lark again. Just a 2-note segment from a house sparrow. We're back to horned lark again. And Phoebe. And Phoebe. House sparrow. Ooh, now we get to drink our tea. At least that's the mnemonic I always learned for Eastern towhee. Drink your tea. That one's also Eastern towhee. All right, let's stop that there. So you can see that's how this entire thing operates. Now it has advanced. This is just a mixed beginner game level. So you've got all these different ones on the right. You can put them all in together and just run through them. And this, you could just sit there and quiz yourself on this all day long if you wanted to. And it's just a great resource. Really enjoy the app. Highly recommend it. If you've got the money for it, definitely something to look into. All right. Now we're going to jump into and take a look at a free way to do this, and it also kind of helps reinforce why would you upload your images and audio segments and stuff to eBird. You do it because there's value in it for everyone, so it's kind of a collective methodology in it. So looking at this list of options, again, we're on the Explore tab, kind of a default space to find all the good stuff. Right down here in More Ways to Explore, so let's zoom into this. There is Search Photos and Sounds, and I noted before that's the Macaulay Library where this stuff is kept. So these are partnered databases, basically. So let's go to Search Photos and Sounds. Let this pop over here. All right. So it just kind of has a general view in here, throws a whole bunch of pictures up. You can see just above where the photos are on the left, we can see some numbers. There's over 17 million photographs have been uploaded to this database and 625,000 sound segments and 167,000 video pieces. So let's do this. Let's go into Housefinch. And we can select it right here. All right. Right now it's defaulted and showing us the images, but what I'm interested in is sound. So right up in that same numbered segment, we've filtered this down, and now there's 2,437 sound segments for Housefinch alone. Let's click on that. Zoom back out, and we can see something we haven't seen before. And these are the sonograms. This is the visual representation of these bird calls that are going on. These can be incredibly useful. They can be a little cryptic at first, and they can almost be a bit off-putting. But if you really listen to the call at the same time that you see the call and how it goes, you can start to pick apart elements that sometimes you hadn't thought to pick apart. On this. And we'll see this in a couple of different spaces. Let's just click on one of these. The one in the middle top right here looks interesting. Let's click here. It'll bring this up, should update the image, and let's play this. Let's stop it right there. As you listen to that call on here, I envision somebody taking a dry erase board with a marker and it's squeaking on that board up and down. So I have like an image in my mind once I see these scribble marks from that call. It's very complex, but let's listen to that one more time. All right, so you can start to get an idea, the quality of the call, the sound it makes, things of that nature. Let's go back to here though. And let's scroll through this list a bit. And well, this is interesting. As we get down here, this call doesn't look anything like the other ones. This is like stacked. It's really dense bands that are stacked on top of each other. So let's click on that one. I'm curious. Let's play this. All right. So that's not the song, that is the call note of a house finch. So the interesting thing is look how stacked up that is, how complex those lines look in this kind of pillar formation of it. So keep this in your mind. This is really fascinating and interesting. I remember early on when I was birding, I had some challenges because I thought the call notes of a house sparrow sounded almost identical to a house finch. So let's hear this one more time, and then we're going to switch over to a house sparrow from this house finch. So let's listen to this quick. Okay, so the quality of that, let's then jump right quickly. I already have it up over here. This is house sparrow. Let's see if we can find something that looks like a pillar. Oh, we can. Right down here in the right, that looks like a pillar right on the right edge of the screen. Let's open this up. All right, so I think this is the value in these sonogram tool sets. You have these stacked bands. It's that same pillar formation, so they do have a similarity in their call type. But these bands are not as tightly stacked to one another. They're not as complex. And you can hear that in the quality of a house sparrow making noise. You can hear that simplicity to it. And when you move over or back to a house finch, let's get that one back on screen, if I can find, there it is. There's a complexity in this one. It's very, for lack of better terminology, finch-like. It has a complexity, a more of a, almost a melodious vibe to it. But you can see how densely stacked these bands are in there. It's a much more complex utterance from these house finches than it is from the house sparrows. But seeing that and then hearing them, this is what these tool sets provide, is this excellent value in being able to catch how these things differ. If they sound the same to you, then you can kind of come into them and look through these tool sets. Now, certainly, jumping into this stuff inside of eBird has a greater complexity to it because you're kind of fishing around on your own. There are, however, some other details and pieces. If we go back to this Explore page, so we were just in here, we were in Search Photos and Sounds, so you can just do your own work inside of that. Similar though to Larkwire, if we go all the way down the screen into Learn Birding Skills, we have Photo and Sound Quiz. So inside of that, we can do something similar. Let's go to Start Quiz. And this is interesting. You can set your quiz to a specific time frame and location. So we're going to leave it at April 4th in Minnesota, and we're going to do sounds and start quiz. So you can do this photograph so you can really get to know your birds by photo if you're still working on a lot of those. But let's do this. All right, I'm going to be honest, I have no idea what that is. Now, I do know that there are birds in the background singing, but I believe because of what I'm being faced with on the right-hand side from the duck standpoint or waterfall standpoint, that's what they're getting at, is that it's one of these birds in there. Now, presumably these have been vetted before. I honestly have no idea. I don't think I've ever heard a bufflehead make a noise. I've heard goldeneyes make noise. I don't think I've ever heard Barrow's goldeneye make noise. They're fairly uncommon in Minnesota. Hooded merganser, I don't think it'd be, if this is anything, it's a bufflehead, but I don't even know that because I don't know bufflehead well, but I'm going to tap on it. It is incorrect. It's a hooded merganser. Somebody out there is going to listen to this and be like, oh, yeah, Ben didn't know his hooded mergansers. Well, guess what? I didn't. So the audio quality, then they ask you to rate it. So this is an interesting thing. This is like a user interactive system. I find this audio quality not be that great. Why? Because it's very muted and there's other birds singing over the top of it, and I'm not really sure which one I'm being intended to identify. Now, if I knew my hooded merganser really well, then this would be relatively easy, but I'm going to mark this as a 2-star, maybe a 3. I just had a hard time with it. The aggregate will get it. All right, so we have more birds that I don't necessarily know the answer to. So It's early in the spring. If this is an April 4th bird, I don't know how it would be pine grosbeak in Minnesota or gray-crowned rosy finch. So process of elimination, I know it's not house finch. Then is it purple? That didn't sound like a house finch to me. I'm going to listen to this again. I don't believe that to be a house finch. I don't know if I found a mistake. And so this is a bit of the challenge in this whole app in here. That doesn't sound like a house finch to me. House finches have a burrier quality to them. We just got done listening to some house finch. That doesn't sound anything like it to me. Now, this is down in Iowa. This is an Iowa recording. So it is possible we're talking about regional dialect differences. I'm not really sure in there. I'm not going to go much further in this because currently I'm just mostly embarrassing myself. But at the same time, I probably need the review. So another tool set for you to take a look at, eBird, the Macaulay Library, and then the Larkwire app. There's a couple of them. And hopefully you find something that you can enjoy. Do while you're locked in your homes a little bit or sitting on the patio and just work through your bird calls and identifications. Great tool sets that are available. Thanks. Okay, we are back for the final segment and slightly atypical. I'm back on camera. There's not necessarily something I specifically want to show you, but I do want to talk about yard birding in a little more depth. And part of the reason I wanted to talk about that is because maybe we're all going to be doing a lot of it for the foreseeable future. And for some individuals, myself included in the group, yard birding actually can be a lot of fun because it is the ultimate in constraint birding. It gives you a very finite space you can operate from, and it makes you think about bird watching in a very different way, and it makes you strain to get to species that are a real challenge to get. And specifically flyovers can be quite exciting. If you go out and do a spring sky watch looking for waterfowl flyovers, geese and swans especially. I had a flock of tundra swans last week. But additionally, when you look at some of this stuff and think about, okay, well, what can I do from a yard standpoint? What can I find some excitement in? Something that I've done is I kind of pick out an avatar bird, a species that I'm really excited about seeing in the yard or near the yard that I can hear from my yard. And this year's right now is an eastern meadowlark. I've mentioned before that right across the street, so just opposite of where this camera is facing, we have an empty weedy lot. It's several acres. It's slated for some type of development in the future. Not really sure, but for the time being, it is a weedy lot basically. And the eastern meadowlarks have set up shop and quite enjoyed it. I had the first one come in this year. I don't think I put the date down. I think it was the 25th of March. So from the 25th of March on, if I catch my days right, puts me at day 11. I've had it singing every day during that time. Now, normally I'd be driving to work across the metro and I would not be able to hear this bird unless it was singing in the evening. But since I'm here, I'm in my office starting at 6 a.m., I can crack the window, and throughout the day I get a chance and I can hear the eastern meadowlark. So I'm on day 11. I'm looking forward to seeing how many days I can put together in a row before the eastern meadowlark is quiet, or maybe they're on a nest and not making noise. Who knows? But just kind of like a little mini game that you can play with yourself and enjoy day over day and have something to look forward to on it. Now, certainly you could take that to the extreme and say, well, how many days in a row can I get the same 10 species or 12 species, whatever it might be, depending on what you're getting in the yard. And then straining for that, first of year bird from your yard you don't normally get, or maybe you never really think about it because you got one somewhere else. So this year for me, just earlier in the week, I had a turkey vulture come through, and it was my first of year turkey vulture, which just happened to coincide with being a yard bird for me as well. So it's fun to start picking up some of these first of year species that maybe usually you're out at a park, you're at a bigger, better location, and you get the species. And now you've relegated it to a yard bird and kind of create some excitement about it. The one other thing I wanted to mention is this is actually a great time to flex social media. There are always certainly points where we wish we could just unplug from social media completely, or maybe we do unplug from it because, politics gets in there, a lot of other things get in the way, and sometimes social media isn't that exciting. But during times like this is an excellent opportunity to stay in touch with your friends and other individuals that you birdwatch with. And so something that I've done in the last week is I have a Facebook group that I maintain for some individuals that might be interested in doing some larger goals that I get into. And those were going to be very social goals with a lot of individuals, hoping people would hike with me all day long or have a big sit location all together in a specific spot where there's a lot of bird traffic. That's not really viable right now. So what I did was I set up an event and invited everybody in my group. There were 60 some people in this group. Invited everybody to birdwatch from home and create an aggregate yard list. So sort of a mini competition where everybody just birds their own yard and neighborhood. So I created a little rule set in there that said you can stretch your legs during the day, and as long as you can still see your roof, still see your home in some way, shape, or form, your building, whatever it is, wherever you happen to live, if you're able to still see it from where you're standing, then you can count those birds. So the whole idea, the fun of it is check in when you're able to, or stay the whole day digitally, and we'll use Facebook Messenger throughout the day. We'll update an aggregate list for the entire group of people and see how many bird species we can all see together. Flyovers, resident birds, new migrants coming in, whatever the situation may be, just a fun way to interact with others. Run that group messenger chat through Facebook up, and have 10, 15, 20 people in there popping things back and forth, and just an opportunity to check in with people, maybe share some selfies, share some bird photographs, whatever, individuals are interested in doing. So maybe something you yourself could do as well. Even if you just have one other person you're interested in doing something like that with, it could be a fun way throughout the day to check in with that person, pop a note and say, hey, I just picked up my first mourning dove of the day, or I picked up, we get a male pheasant that crows just across the street in the weedy lot as well. So, finally hear him for the first time on the day. In the last couple of days, we had a northern flicker come through the neighborhood. So hopefully I can pick up a northern flicker tomorrow as well when we run our event. But just a couple of ideas, a couple of things you might be able to do for yourself, really work on that yard list and just kind of have some fun with it. These are extraordinary times, but I'm confident, if you come up with some creative ways to keep yourself busy, keep yourself engaged in bird watching, learn some of the bird calls with the tool sets we talked about earlier, learn how to research on some of these websites, it can, provide some extra, more fulfilling, ideas for you in the birding space. So that's all I've got for this week. Thank you for tuning in. I hope everyone is enjoying it. Please feel free to comment with ideas and things you're looking to hear more on. And we'll catch you in a future episode.